So at first, let me do something about the elephant, or better, the dragon in the room. Just some of the most popular questions I usually get. Yes, I'm deaf since my birth. And now I don't speak any sign language. So if you came here to listen to something about sign language, you're wrong place, because I do not speak any sign language. That's just because I grew up this way. So, yeah. And that's, of course, you also may ask me question about it. That's just, if you come to me afterwards or just ask me, I prefer it that way, because if you just have assumptions and do something that I'm not, for example, speaking sign language, then it's just easier to communicate. And if you have some questions that I might not like, I will tell you. If I'm not in the mood, I will also tell you. That's also possible, but very improbable. But yeah, usually I will tell you how it is. So who am I? In deafness space, I've been active for deaf people for more than 25 years. So when I was starting with of the age of 14, I started to have created the first association in Switzerland, the National Association. I created another one, and also was board member of 3 national associations. So I have a bit of an idea what I'm speaking about when it comes to deafness, not just legally, not just how technically it works, but pretty much everything. In data space, I'm a data engineer. I'll be starting as a consulting next month. At the moment, I'm just having my free time here. I'm also a data platform MVP. Usually I speak about SQL Server, PowerShell, and Azure. So I also have a user group called Data TGF. TGF, thank God it's Friday, so it's just in the evening of Friday. So just to enjoy the time before the weekend. I'm also one of the organizers of DataBash, that's an online conference for German-speaking Europe. Yeah, it's going to be again this year on November 25th. So I'm actually saying this for the first time now. This is actually not really published yet. We will do that next week, but this is going to be happening again this year. I'm also a co-leader of the virtual DEI group. I just joined them last month, and I'm from Switzerland. So you might recognize my accent, a German accent, so that's my native language. What will we learn today? Why would you have your talk more accessible? You will also learn about how the ear works, how the history was like of the hearing aids. That's what I was promising. Of course, also the future of hearing aids, what the technology will be in some years, what I predict, and all the way how you can improve your own talk so it's more accessible to other people, so more people can profit it. Because if you have accessible talk, means that you also have a better accessibility to normal hearing people, right? It's not just for deaf or hearing impaired people, it's really for everyone. Everyone profits from it. Let me talk about the definitions first, just so we are on the same page, so we know what we talk about. Just some definitions. The first, what means hearing loss? Hearing loss means if you have more than 20 decibel hearing loss. I'll come to that later, what that means. It's just a technical definition by the World Health Organization. More than 5% of the world population needs therapy to address this hearing loss in a way. That means actually more than those 5% have a hearing impairment. So it just requires for those more than 5% of the world population, they need a hearing aid or something like this. Hard of hearing refers to people with hearing loss. So it's just a very broad term, actually. It's just, up to the profound hearing loss, like I am. Since 1999, for example, I do not hear anything at all anymore. I'm completely deaf. So I used to be deaf before. So you see, there's also a kind of a space in between. This is a bit fluid, the thing. So you have, even if you're deaf, most of the time, actually, you can hear something. Why I don't hear it so much, I will explain you later. So just very quick also how a normal hearing works. This is a slide that was provided by Cochlear. This is actually the hearing aid maker of my cochlear implants. The outer ear is basically just something that picks up the sound. And afterwards, you have the eardrum and the 3 bones that actually just transfer the sound again in form of vibrations to the inner ear. You see here some small pieces of my laser pointer here. So, can you see it? Yes. You see here some small things here about here. Those are muscles, right? If you have, for example, a shotgun that is next to your ear, those muscles will try to stop the sound, to destroy your ear. But because it's so fast, if you fail, it won't be that fast. That's why you can actually get deaf by a shotgun. If you are exposed to a too loud environment, let's say because you are a construction worker or something like this, over time, those muscles will also get tired. You know? So the sound gets just fully blown into the cochlea, which is the inner ear, the part of it, right? And behind of this, there is actually the pipelines to the brain, just nerves, so that you actually interpret the sound in your brain. So essentially what we hear is really happening in the brain. So what's decibel? Decibel, about 10 decibel is a normal breathing. Take a watch, you get the idea. It's actually logarithmic scale. It's not a linear thing. So as a thumb of rule, every third decibel, it's actually a doubling of the sound, right? So the doubling of the loudness. Actually, it's not loudness; it's actually the sound, the pressure of the sound on the eardrum. So this is how it works. So you have an idea of it. So that's now just a bit technical now, so we have a bit idea of those words, what I'm saying afterwards. Let's go to this talk. Do you know what was the first hearing aid? Any ideas? Yes. Well, so a good guess. Other votes? No? The eyes. You actually pick much more up from eyes than you might think, even if you are normal hearing. You've mouthed something to someone, you know, or you've expressed your own face somehow, so that people actually will know what you mean. Just not, it's just something. That's actually a very helpful way of communication. During the pandemic, we all know that masks were not very comfy, not just comfy, but also not nice to look at. because actually you have a loss of information. And this information is something that we require if you are hearing impaired or deaf. Yeah. So if you give a talk, please make sure that you don't look like a witness program. You know? So the shadow will cast it on your face. Actually, it's better to have a light in front of you. Also, if you have a beard, please make sure that your lips are free. So actually you can read from the lips. But it's actually not just reading as you might think. A lot of people think we just can read like a book or something like this, but it's not, because actually only about 30% of the lip reading really works. A famous example is, for example, mother and butter. If you look at the lips like this, two words, then you won't be able to distinct of it. So, what do you think was the second hearing aid? Well, you guessed it before, it's the hands. It's really about 5 decibel amplification you get with the hand just listening like this. There are a lot of pictures of the actually history in the antiques, also in medieval age, that people listen to other people with the ear. Now, what was the third one in history? Any ideas? At this point, actually, we get more into history. In the medieval age, we really have sources of it. Before, we didn't really have sources, but there's actually more guesses what those kind of held there. The third one is really horn shells. So people use the animal horns like from cows and listen to those or shells that actually just make the hands to listen it a bit bigger. Later on, about the 17th century, people also started to create horns basically themselves from wood. So they have something like this, a tubus, something else that even gets the sound even better. So actually, you can really imagine that they would listen to people very closely so that people can actually talk into those tubes, into the trumpet. 1747 actually was the first electrical stimulation of the ear, and it was actually, if you really can imagine a dangerous experiment, as we could call it today, because those people back then didn't really understand electricity yet. What they wanted to find out was, can we hear electricity? Because electricity was just discovered around in the mid-1700s. So it's, can you hear it? This is something that does it do something? So what this guy here did is just really put an electrode on the eardrum, right? And he apparently reported, yes, you can hear some buzzing. That's because, as we know today, our nerves actually are run by electricity. So if you have some implant that has some electricity, actually can also stimulate the muscle. The famous frog experiment, right? You can stimulate the muscles with that. This is exactly this. It took a bit later until they found out how to make a microphone. It's also how to make it somehow useful, right? That's the telephone. Most famously, Abraham Graham Bell, who also was engaged for the deafs because he had some friends that he also tried to create something that to help some friends that were deaf. So. The first electrical hearing aid that was really helpful in that regard was a bit later though. You really can imagine this is at first were quite bulky boxes. So those hearing aids are a bit later actually, but you also can see that there is basically a phone they had to require to carry with them. So it's what we see here with this is first limitation of hearing aids. So what the hearing aids actually essentially are today. This is a hearing aid. This is much smaller than it was back then. And as you can see, maybe this is the battery. This is almost bigger than the computer chip inside. Right. This is a cochlear implant. What we see, this is not a hearing aid. I'll come to that a bit later. But this is still a limitation we have today, battery power. We want to carry it behind the ear. More than 20 years ago, I used to have something, a box looking like thing about this, that I had to wear here, a cable up here. And this was really basically the cochlear implant back then. But ever since, it's been miniaturized resized. The implant itself didn't really change. Even today, it's still about the same. I'll come to that later again. But that's still a limitation we have today. The invention of transistors also made its stuff smaller, because back then they used vacuum tubes. So you really can imagine there's a vacuum tubes is bulky and heavy, and probably you couldn't carry it for long either, because the batteries back then were quite limited. So you couldn't now just walk around with those hearing aids back then. But with transistors, it's changed. So this is what they looked about that time then. The first cochlear implant was actually also a revolution, because in first time of history, there was no amplification of sound. So, you know, probably people with hearing aids, at least now you do, but normally if people listen to a hearing aid, the hearing aid picks up a sound with a microphone, and then it gets amplified. But a cochlear implant does not work that way. What it actually does is really, essentially, it picks up the sound, puts the sound basically to the implant via induction. There's a magnet that is on top, and then it, you could say, electrolutes the hearing nerves. It's actually not really electrification, but more like induction. They use induction on the hearing nerves, so to trigger the nerves to signal to the brain. Right? So there's no amplification. There's just transforming basically from sound to electricity. The computer chip made it also possible to make it even smaller. It started in the 1960s, but it did require about 20 years. About 20 years, so that actually the CPU came to the hearing aids. I mean, when I was a kid, from 2 years old, it was in 1981, I was pretty much the first generation of people that actually, with the strength of the CPUs, could listen to hearing aids. If that wouldn't have happened back then, probably I would have worn these kind of hearing aids that actually you have to carry around on the body. So also batteries. The batteries, again, are a problem with the cables, which also meant you could hear static sounds from the clouds, stuff like this. When I had the cochlear implants back then, in late 1990s, I received the first cochlear implant in 1999. There was still also a box that I would carry around. And I also had a cable here, so I could hear the static as well. When I was a teenager in 1995, there were the first fully digital hearing aids. That meant, for the first time of history, you could program the input that actually came in from the microphone and give you a different output, really. Before you actually had to, analogically, you had to basically a screwdriver that you had to tweak your hearing aid. And the tweaking means basically you have to adapt the sound to your ear, because you don't hear just something flatly, basically, but there are also, of course, pitches, or different pitches of sound. That means many people, for example, have hearing loss in high pitched sounds. Others have in low pitched sounds, for example. That's why it's actually not so helpful to say I have 50% of hearing loss, because that could actually also mean that the high-pitched sounds, you don't hear anything, but you hear everything of the low-pitched sounds. Right. So it's with digital hearing aids, you actually could really tweak this. So that means also to adapt it better to your hearing requirements. But that also means that if you speak too loud to me, for example, still today, then what essentially happens is that the hearing aid just closes because it's too loud, or it amplifies the other sounds. So it's actually better to speak normally to people with hearing aids. Don't scream at them. It's also not nice to me. I also realize you scream at me. I can see it from your expression, of course. It's not just that. So, and I think nobody really likes that. But also it means your sound that actually gets transmitted to your ear as a hearing aid user is getting distorted. Because, like I said before, some sounds get more amplified than others. So high-pitched, low-pitched. So this is something that you have to take care of. At this point, any questions? Okay. In about 2012, there was really a connectivity revolution with Bluetooth. I was waiting for this for so long, even when I was at university, because one problem that I had is with hearing aids, also with cochlear implants, was cell phone. Cell phone, I have to explain it perhaps a bit different first. At first, in the 1980s and the 1990s, we used induction coils that are inside of the hearing aids. We still can use it today. There are sometimes in conference rooms, there are loops inside that actually just create electrical magnetic field that we can grab and listen to. That means if I can switch it on, that I can pick the sound directly from a microphone that gets transmitted to my hearing aids. That means there's no friction in terms of distance. There's no loss of that. But with cell phones, I had a problem that the cell phones have also an electromagnetic field. They send data, they receive data with the electromagnetic field. That means if I would use induction loop, I would just hear the sound of this, basically. This is a drumming, really. This is very low-pitched sound. It's a humming that actually you just hear because it's actually not meant for grabbing some to listen to, but it's just data that gets sent. But with Bluetooth, this changed. I could really, first time in history, listen to the phone. That means also to Spotify, for example. I can do YouTube. I have just basically headphones integrated in my skull, basically, because it's really an implant, right? So I can listen to it and hear the stuff. It's really helpful if you can do that. I also have actually a microphone that I can connect to my laptop. Unfortunately, it's not so far yet. I could directly listen to the laptop, but it works with cell phones. It's with, for me, it's with Macintosh. I think it would actually work because Macintosh, also Apple invented this to send sound for people with hearing problems, so they can actually listen to the Apple. If Apple, of course, wants to do this, it means it's accessible. It also means you can sell more products to people, because we essentially, hopefully, also people. So, yeah, we also are customers. In about 2019, we had another revolution that's actually really closed captioning with machine learning, right? What you see here, down here, is not perfect. Of course, you probably saw a lot of mistakes that it did, but still, if it does mistakes, it's helpful for me. I can get, especially if you change the topic, I can still find out, you changed the topic, or if I misheard a word, I can maybe read it here. So it's also helpful for me, because it's not like I don't hear anything at all. I also, for example, can use phone calls. I can do that, but it's more, I have too much more focus on it than you do. For me, it's harder to listen to. Of course, I have to say this password, right? ChatGPT will also probably help this in future to improve the subtitles and live captionings, because, of course, behind it is a large language model that can also improve the subtitles. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it's really helpful. It is. So please, if you have a presentation, just use it so people get used to it, so actually also get covered by it, by people get used to it. Also, if I listen to a video, for example, if you show a video in a presentation, please just use captions if they are available. If you can use it, please use it. AI and machine learning is also coming to hearing aids and core implants. And what they do is, of course, not captioning. It's not that what is going to happen. But what they do is filtering noise. And that means, essentially, decrease listening efforts for me. You really have to imagine if you have to listen to people all day, really focus to listen to people, that actually helps to reduce the noise. Last night I left the party quite early. I was at the party even though, but it's just too loud for me. It's the cochlear implant, so everything is blurred for me, basically. You really have to imagine that basically for each ear you have 15,000 of hearing cells for every pitch that there is, from low pitch to the high pitch sounds. You have this kind of ability to listen to this. What I have in my ears are 22 electrodes, in contrast to that. 22 electrodes that actually just trigger my hearing nerves. So that's actually just a huge difference. So if you have a presentation and think you might have a cool music, please mute the music. I prefer to have a more silent, because the hearing aid, also cochlear implants, they are not really made for music, because they have to use the computing for voice. It does not mean, of course, that I don't enjoy music. I do enjoy music. I can enjoy music as well. It's just maybe not as good as you do, but still, music is usually a distraction for me. Today, already some manufacturers use the deep neural networks to improve this kind of thing, to filter out noise, so we can actually listen more to the voice, right? So challenges of hearing aids, already told them, needs to be fit behind the ear, means you have a power limit with the batteries. Back then, I told you about that we had the normal batteries in my pocket here, basically. And back then, I also had to check that my batteries would last the whole day. So sometimes I even would have to carry batteries for a replacement for me, because at any time of the day, it could just stop to quit working, because back then, I had batteries that lasted about 1.5 day. So when I was using hearing aids back in the day, in the 1990s, then I would have 1 button batteries for each ear. That means almost every day I had to replace them. I could not just afford to say, I'm going to sleep now, in the morning you get new batteries. Those would have been too expensive. Nowadays it's a bit different. I have rechargeable batteries. They last about 16 hours per day. So they really get through the day, and I can just, before I sleep, recharge them. So during the nights, I don't hear anything. You can do whatever you want. My wife can listen to radio, can listen to rock music, and I don't hear anything, but I can sleep just fine. So how does a cochlear implant sound like? What do I hear? There's also a quite popular question that people ask me, and I have a simulation here that gives you some impression of how I could hear. Now, some people that used to be hearing, so you actually can lose your hearing in life, later in life, not just from birth. There are many reasons for it. For example, you can lose your hearing to an accident, let's say in a car accident. I know someone who lost his hearing to a car accident. Maybe a shooting accident in military. Actually quite some people I know, they have a high pitch hearing loss because of this. Someone pulled the trigger accidentally in a room where it wasn't supposed to happen, but they had the earbuds off and heard the sound. Or if you have received medication, that actually also can happen in order to save your life, that you actually can lose your hearing with that. Perhaps actually I lost my hearing with it that way, just shortly after my birth. We don't know for sure, but that's when I was born actually with a sickness, so they gave me some medications that may have destroyed my ear. So people who used to hear, they often say the sound that they can hear now with the cochlear implant sounds robotic, or like Mickey Mouse, very high pitched. Very high pitched. That's because the high pitched sound is, if you put the electrode into the cochlea, into the middle of the ear, then you can't put the whole, can't use the whole ear or the whole cochlea, which has actually 3 lines up. Only about half, because you really have to imagine that the cochlea is about the size of a rice corn. So if they do a surgery, they use actually a microscope to place the electrodes in the ear. And because it's so fragile, they can't put the electrode fully inside, because the structure of the electrode needs some strength as well, but also the cochlea is also fragile, so you can't just force it down. So 22 electrodes that actually only uses half of the cochlea. Yeah? So this is about the sound, how it sounds like.
We were allowed to use number 2 pencils. I was tired of running in the sprinkler. He wanted to stay up past midnight. He checks out 3 books from the school library.
I don't know if you heard anything or understood anything. I sure didn't, but I have the double of it, of course. This is the same with a hearing aid.
Turn the lights out when you leave. The hot fudge sundae gave him a stomachache. Robins lay blue eggs.
Do you understand this? It's probably much clearer. I didn't understand this either. So this was with the hearing aid. Unfortunately, I don't have the sound that it will be processed normally. But you get the idea. It's really garbled. It's really a strange thing as how this sounds. So imagine if you are in a loud environment like yesterday, or something like this, then you really need to focus to listen to people all day long. That's just the conference, but also later if you're on train, where we also have sound and everything like this. So you get tired much more quick than other people. You know, okay. For some reason, I can't advance anymore. I'll just start PowerPoint again. Oh, that's it. So I like to wrap up. So some tools. If you give a presentation, show your face, right? Like I said before, if you use a face, if you use your hands to express something that we can pick you up from as well. Even though I don't use sign language, even though I can't speak any sign language, it's still a bit helpful, like it is for you, perhaps, if you also change your topic, for example, put it on the slide that we know that you change your topic, because, like I said before, we try to make something from the lips, but it's only about 30% that you really can read from. So that means also I have to do a lot of guesswork, right? So if you speak, then try to speak slowly. I'm not so good at that either because I'm speaking quite fast myself. I know that. A lot of people that are deaf, they also complain to me, you speak too fast, could you speak a bit slower? But I think it's for everyone the same. If you can do some breaks during the talk, then people can think. I sometimes also like to think, just, what is being said? Just take a break, maybe sip on the water. I felt this too just today. And if possible, use closed captions. Yes, also make sure you're using microphone. It does help. Sometimes when speakers have it, actually, especially if it's only one room, I would actually put a microphone directly to the amplifiers, so I can grab this directly to my sound to transmit to my ears via Bluetooth. Yeah. So, if you have feedbacks, please give me feedback. I really appreciate them. Now, do you have any questions? Can you come a bit closer, please? It's too far for me. Yeah.
Do you think phones in the future could have the capability to have an induction built inside the phone?
The phone?
Yeah,
Cell phone. How it works?
Do you think it could have the capability to have an induction loop inside?
Yeah, this is in the past. Yes, in the past. The induction loop really worked like this, that the phone, I mean, back then, before the cell phones, I could use the induction loop. I just have to switch and put the phone on here, then I could hear it. And if I was lucky, then I had a good phone that I can listen to in the early, from the 1980s to early 1990s. There were also phones that had a magnet inside the phone, so I couldn't really listen to those. But yeah, today that's not really something we use anymore. A lot of hearing aids today, they don't have induction loops anymore because it's quite an outdated technology. It's actually much more convenient to listen to Bluetooth. Also because, for example, in church, my own wedding, when I was there at the altar, I had to tilt my head so I could listen to the priest who was giving the talk. So I would be in the correct position for the magnetic field. That's how it worked. Yeah. Sometimes, but there's also other exceptions. I mean, if you have a good loop, then you don't have to tilt. So it's actually just listen to it. It also can happen. But it's also a good question with the induction loop in the room. Just last year, Bluetooth actually gave out a new protocol that is called Aurocast. You might have heard it because it also means that people with earbuds, with Bluetooth, they can grab any sound from anywhere. So basically just like a QR code, listen to it via phone, and just listen to it basically to get the information. But it could be useful in airports, for example, if you listen to your music, but you don't want to miss any announcements. Or in museums where you can get the audio guide to the guide from to it. So that means basically at the same time, just like Wi-Fi, many people can grab the sound signal, which is normally not possible today, right? No. There was another question. Could you come a bit closer, please?
Because my Bluetooth is connected to my hearing
Yep.
I connected on the app, so I could hear on the app while seeing and seeing the screens. They also had Welsh and not English, so I couldn't follow through reading. But that was my question. My question, why did you decide not to learn sign language?
So the question, to repeat it, why did I decide not to learn sign language? Well, this was essentially not my decision, right? Actually, my parents did. And one of the reasons why they did to decide against sign language was my mom is also handicapped. She actually had polio, so she has one arm paralyzed. So she decided not to learn sign language because it also, I mean, sign language is also a complex, normal language, and also a lot of sign languages exist today. That means almost every country has its own sign language, right? It's not just one universal sign language either. So it's so if they would have taught me sign language, they would have learned how to learn a language and to teach it to me, basically. So it's not their mother language either. That is also a reason why. And today, actually, most people, at least in Switzerland, in countries where you can afford it, in countries you have cochlear implants, and the cochlear implants are pretty expensive. It's about $50,000 per year. So my year is basically worth $100,000. Yeah, it's so it's pretty expensive. So it's actually, if you can afford it, then you actually don't really use sign language today anymore, if it's possible. It also depends on the child. Some children still require sign language, and some don't. Okay. That's how, does this answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Please, closer.
You speak very good English as somebody that is. Was it difficult learning it being deaf?
Is it difficult to learn a foreign language? Yeah. Okay. Yes. I would say it's probably more difficult than for other people. Yes, of course, because let's say French. I'm not so good at French. In Switzerland, we actually speak 4 languages, right? It's German, it's my native language. Swiss German as well, but also French, Italian, and Romansh. Those are the 4 languages we have officially in Switzerland. And I am supposed to be able to speak French as well, because I've learned it in school, but I'm not very good at it because the French sound is very different. Also, I haven't really used it for more than 20 years. Also, I'm using English almost every day, actually every day, because my wife and I usually speak in English. So it's, she's from Indonesia, so it's also something. But essentially, if, let's say, phonetically it's quite close to my own language, German, it's a bit easier, and I would say then it's not much different than from you. But French is quite different also in sound, and that makes it harder for me to listen and to understand, to interpret the language. Also, because, like I said, it's a lot of guesswork. Sometimes, also in English, it's guesswork is a bit harder to guesswork because it sounds a bit different. So yes, it's a bit harder. Other questions? Okay. If not, you can come and grab some chocolate here from Switzerland. Thank you a lot.